Hi everyone, it's Sarah here with a highly anticipated video, the Crayola Signature Brush Marker Review. It's a brush and detail dual tip marker set. My mom got these for me for Christmas. Thank you, Mom. And even though I have been really wanting to try them out, I wanted to save my first impressions for you guys. So I'm about to unbox them, do a review, and a comparison with other brush marker brands that I have, such as TomBow, the Colorin, and Recollections, and the Crayola Super Tips, because I've been using and loving this marker for so many years, since a lot of you probably have them. I have a cat hair in my mouth. So hopefully this video will be helpful for you Crayola lovers or just marker users in general who are looking for a new brand to try or a new style. I'll put the prices on screen to compare the Super Tips versus these, and throughout the video I'll also give you price points and just my likes and dislikes about each type of marker. Leo, come here. Leo, come see the markers. On the back of the tin, it shows all the different colors that you're going to receive inside, and it also has an example of some beautiful Crayola calligraphy, which I would definitely like to try in the future, blending the colors in lettering like they have done here. Also, Leo left one of his hairs. Thank you, Leo. If you missed it, I posted a Rectus journal video. It's been forever, but I got a new one up and it's really fun. I'll link that below along with my bullet journal layouts, so if you haven't seen those, go ahead and check them out. But right now, let's rip in. I'm just gonna go for it. That went really far. There's a thin layer of plastic on the tin, so it's not gonna get scratched up at the store. So if that's a concern of yours, it's gonna stay nice until you purchase it. Knowing me, I'm gonna have this all scratched and scuffed up pretty soon. But it is a pretty nice tin, and I like the shiny metallic artwork on the front. Ah, this is all shining in your face. The moment of truth. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Ooh. When you first open it up, you're going to be greeted by 8 beautiful markers. And when you lift up the tray, there's going to be 8 more for a total of 16 markers. And since they're dual tip, you're of course going to have 32 different colors. So that's cool. I'm going to choose blue-green as my very first test. The blue-green is the detail end, and teal is the brush tip. It's pretty smooth. I like the way that this writes. Let's try the brush end. I like these. And then I'll just grab one of the Crayola Super Tips so you guys can see the difference between how the tips look and how they write. To be honest, for the most part, packaging quality doesn't really interest me. I'd rather have a great product with subpar packaging and maybe not a bunch of flashy details than the company spending so much time and effort and money on the packaging and then having a very low quality product. But to be unbiased and fair, I want to give you guys my opinion on the tin and comment on the quality of it. So I'm going to compare it to a very high-end product, the Prismacolor colored pencils. So you can see I started bending the Crayola lid versus the Prismacolor one, and the Crayola one is definitely more bendy, but it's not going to break, especially when taking into account that Prismacolors are usually over $100 depending on where you get them, but yeah, they're very expensive. Always use coupons if you purchase from craft stores. Moving on to the inside packaging, the plastic that the markers themselves are contained in is definitely very flimsy. Here I wasn't trying to rip it, but I accidentally ripped that part of the groove. Again, not important to me at all, but I just wanted to share it in case that's something that you're very passionate about with products. Personally, I'd rather them skimp out a little bit on packaging so you pay less for the product, but that's just my opinion. And in comparison to the Prismacolor, this plastic is a lot more durable and flexible and not like rippy. Here I'm creating a color chart or marker swatches for the Crayola Signature brush tip markers, and the other side as well, the detailing point. I'll get to that. When I get a fresh new pack of markers, I like to do this and stick this piece of paper in with the packaging of the markers, or just in a place where I keep all my drawing stuff. It really helps you know exactly what you're getting every time you're trying to set up a bullet journal spread or drawing, because the color on the cap of the marker isn't going to necessarily be exactly what it shows up like on the page. I definitely like the range of colors that they have included in this set. There is a great mix of pastels, bold, bright colors, as well as a good blend of warm and cool tones. So now let's compare these 32 colors to the 50 colors that you would get in a Super Tips pack. The signatures are on the left, of course, and I think that it includes pretty much every color you would really need. The only thing missing from the Super Tips side that I really enjoy having is a light brown tan color that's not included with the signatures. And the Super Tips definitely have way too many reds that are very similar and unnecessary in my opinion, so it's really not too much of a loss. One of my top complaints about the signature markers is the black. It's underpigmented, it has a weird kind of like green tone as opposed to the Super Tips, which is more pigmented, but they cost less. So I don't know what they were going for with this black. It's just not living up to my expectations. On the plus side, the signature markers are a little bit less juicy when you first start out with them, and they don't bleed through the page if you layer up with them a couple times like the Super Tips do. Now let's do some blending to compare how well the colors fade together when layering. As you can see here, the signature marker on the right is a little bit better at blending than the Super Tips marker on the left. Also, here is a tip comparison of the two markers to show you that the brush tip one has a much longer and thinner tip than the Crayola Super Tips, which has a more short and stubby tip. Now let's throw in a couple more markers to compare. I've thrown in TomBow and Copic Sketch. I would like to point out that all these markers are water-based except for the Copic one, which is alcohol, so you'll see the difference really quickly. Drawing on regular inkjet printer paper, which is rather thin, is not a good idea with Copic markers. You can definitely do it, but you want to have something underneath because it goes right through. And if this does happen to you, you're not going to be able to remove it with just soap and water. You're going to need some rubbing alcohol and it'll come right off. By the way, if you're interested in seeing more of what goes on behind the scenes while I'm filming, or other things that I'm doing in my day-to-day life that I don't necessarily update you guys about here on YouTube, follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter to stay up to date. Copic blends really well. It seems like the signature doesn't have much of a range. If you can tell, it just kind of goes from light to dark, whereas Super Tips, you can see the three distinct different tones, if that makes sense, but they're more blocked off and not really blended. And I would say TomBow blends just slightly better than signature, but not too much of a difference. Also, you can see that TomBow and signature don't bleed through the page, but Super Tips does a little bit. Now I want you all to be able to see the marker tips in action, what they look like when I write, how bendy they are, which I will go over a little bit more later. I'm basically writing the Meow Mix jingle on the page here. I wasn't trying to make these super fancy at all, it was just really quick writing. I didn't test the Copic ones for writing because you're not really going to want to use those in bullet journaling, and they are so much more expensive than the other markers that I'm showing. So I kind of bumped that one out, but I did want to include it a little bit. Here I'm writing with the TomBow, which is really easy to write with, and the Colorin, which I did not include in the overall comparison at the end, but I would really like to try the Colorin sets of dual tip brush tip detailing markers. So if any of you guys have tried them, let me know your thoughts and opinions please in the comments below. And also Recollections, which I have at the end here, the white one. I'm just showing you the difference of the tips. It seems like every single brush marker has almost the exact same tip except for the Crayola, which as you can see at the bottom toward the plastic of the marker base, it flattens and then goes into a triangle where all the rest are just angled all the way down. So I do wish that the Crayola signatures would just have their tip be exactly the same as all the other brush markers here. And when it comes to the plastic of the marker barrel itself, I would say it's pretty great quality. Now let's do a more in-depth comparison of 4 of my favorite or most popular dual tip brush marker sets. For this test, I'm trying to write as small as I can with the very tip of the brush point. After that, I'm trying to make the widest lines that I can along with the thinnest line on the brush part, and then I flipped it over to the detailing and I made some lines with that to show you the thickness range. My findings from this experiment are as follows. So the Crayola Signature Marker Pack, of course, comes with 32 colors, 16 markers with dual tips. While writing, I noticed that the very end of the tip is more flexible than the Recollections and TomBow, and it doesn't snap back to its exact shape, so the thinnest part of the tip at the end isn't going to become completely straight again after using it. I don't know how much that actually affects the marker in the future because I just got these, but if it does make you feel better, it hasn't frayed or anything or gotten ruined, it just is not straight. Also, I noticed while creating straight lines, it's not as smooth and it tends to get stuck along the paper and make these kind of like speed bump textures, but that could depend on the angle that you're holding it at, because on the other sheet of paper I did test it and the lines look a lot more smooth, so I guess it's just more prone to doing that. We did already figure out that this set is the least blendable aside from the Crayola Super Tips, but those aren't part of this because they're not dual tips. But this does win the award for the most colors in a single pack, and it wins the award for being the least expensive out of these four. So you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck, and I did include different places that you can purchase this at, and I did include sale prices. Now 50% off is not common, you don't get those all the time, so I would look at the 40% off price for a lot of these unless you are open to waiting. Moving on over to the TomBow set, there are 9 colors per pack, or you can buy them individually, which is really cool if there's a certain color that you really want. This tip has the least amount of bend, but it's still flexible enough, so it's not a hard tip. It's still a soft tip, but it's not going to move as much. The tips are very durable if you use them on smooth paper. You don't want to use any of your brush markers on textured paper or it could eat away and make them fray. I didn't mean to rhyme there. So yeah, these tips are not losing their shape and I've used them quite a bit. They're great for blending minimal streaks on the page. These markers win the award for having the most colors available overall, but there's not a lot per pack, and if you do want all the colors, I did find a 96 pack for $280 on the TomBow website, so I don't know if you could get all those colors at Michael's or another craft store and use coupons and get those for a lot cheaper. Next up is Recollections, and for this one you get 12 colors per pack. It's almost exactly the same bend of tip as TomBow, but just slightly more flexible, you can barely tell. The tip is also very durable, just like the TomBows, and it doesn't lose shape after using it. They are pretty good at blending, but you can still see a little bit of streakage, very, very minimal. And in my personal opinion, this set has the best light or muted pastel range. So the colors in this, I believe, are just so beautiful. They're very dull for using as background colors and accent colors, so if you don't want giant bright pops of color, aside from the orange, which I think just is sticking out like a sore thumb, it doesn't really fit the set, but I think this is a great pastel set if you want something like that and you're just starting out. Last up in this comparison is the Spectrum Aqua or Spectrum Aqua Noir. As you can see here, you're not going to be able to get very detailed with the brush tip at all. It's just so thick and there's not a lot of control with it. For this set of markers, you can get either 12 colors or 6 colors per pack depending on which one you choose. They're very, very super flexible, almost sponge-like I said, so you're going to get the least amount of control. They're the most bendy of all 4. Also, I've had these the longest, but I have noticed it happening with a lot of the different colors that I have. The tips are actually getting ruined. They're fraying and losing their shape. As you can see here with this comparison, it's not good at all. But even if they do fray, they're still great for highlighting and backgrounds in a bullet journal. They don't bleed through to the back of the page. They are great at blending, but unfortunately, they are the most expensive, and for having such a poor quality tip, in my opinion, they shouldn't be that expensive. So definitely get these at your own risk if there's certain colors that you want. The last thing I want to show you guys is the comparison of some fine liners, because the Crayola signature markers do come with a detailed end. So I want to show you markers that are comparable to that fine tip on the end. So here you can see I compared Crayola Signature to TomBow Twin Tones, which are thinner than the regular TomBows, but TomBows do also have a detailed end. The Papermate set is actually a felt tip pen, so it's not going to write as smoothly. It'll show up pretty nicely, but if you're going for that smooth, relaxing feel, those won't feel as smooth. And also I noticed that the detailing side of the Spectrum Aquas are also kind of like a felt tip pen, and they don't write very smoothly, so that's another thing I didn't like about those. We have Le Pen, Stabilo or Stabilo, this one, which I don't know how to say at all, Staedtler, I have no clue. The Pigma Microns, which I've been liking for a very long time. So these are all the ones that I included in my Fineliner set. Of course, there's a ton more that I could have tried, but these are just the ones that I personally had and like. I can list prices for these in the description box below if you're interested. I didn't write a whole chart like I did for the brush tip ones. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, if I missed out on anything, if you have any marker recommendations of sets that I should try in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know. Help the video get spread to recommended on YouTube so even more people will see it. I would really appreciate it. So do I recommend Crayola Signature markers? I think I do. I mean, I haven't used them enough to see if they wear out over time or anything, but my initial reaction is they have a great color palette. I like that the colors are more muted than the TomBow Brights because it's not going to be too bold for your bullet journal pages unless that's something that you want. I like the mix of pastel and bright colors, and I like the way they write for the most part. I like that they don't go through the page as much as the Crayola Super Tips, so definitely recommend getting them. My other two favorite sets that I would recommend are TomBow Pastels and Recollections Pastels. You can see I'm kind of biased toward pastels. I think it's a great beginner's set for brush tips, and even if you don't need any more markers, I think that these would be a great addition to your collection. I'll have a new bullet journal spread for February coming up in just about a week or so. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day and that I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye! Sometimes I just wave too long and it's ridiculous.